Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our third episode of a series of interviews that I'll be conducting over the next two or 3 weeks before I retire from duty, unfortunately. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing to you a chap that I've been in contact with a while now, right back at the beginning, really. His name is Wayne, and I just want to sort of go through Wayne's history and story, really. And as I mentioned, the whole purpose of these interviews is to allow the public to decide whether there's a link between a certain medical intervention and symptoms developing in anyone that's received that medical intervention. So with no further ado, welcome Wayne to the interview, and thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you for having me on, David.
No, thank you for your time. So I think what we'll first start with, really, I like to just sort of establish before we get into the meat and bones a bit, how were you before? Just tell us a bit about you. How old are you, if you don't mind disclosing that to the world?
Yeah.
And what was your health like before the pandemic and the vaccine? And were you on any medicines, etc.? So over to you with that.
Yeah, I'm a 53-year-old male. I used to be a bodybuilder. I used to love running as well. My body didn't like running, but it was the only way that I could lose weight because my metabolism died when I was very young. So I found putting on weight very easy. So it kind of lent itself to being a bodybuilder, and I was very, very strong, very fit, and very healthy. Really, never really got that ill, apart from the odd little cold. But nothing really knocked me. I worked long hours. I travelled quite a lot, always going to shows and concerts and things, and being very active. That sadly changed.
Yeah, let's get into that then. So, what you obviously you've took the vaccine, you took the jab, the alleged vaccine, and can we just sort of dig into that really as to sort of the thinking process behind why you took it? Was there any coercion involved, or was it a free will decision? And also, well, we'll do that bit first, actually. If you just explain your sort of thinking behind it. And as everyone knows, I've had the vaccine myself, so I don't come at this from a holier than thou perspective.
Yeah, sure. I can only put it down to my mother dying in 2020 from the midazolam morphine protocols, NG163, clouding my judgment, because I used to think myself quite sensible and actually look at things critically. And that was quite torturous through many aspects. And I wasn't aware of all of them until I got records a couple of years later. But so dealing with that, the pressure of the job was playing on me through one manager leaving, another one starting, which isn't always nice. My father's health was a worry too. And so the fear campaign that was being pushed at you nightly, it finally managed to seep in. And I was quite adamant that I wasn't going to listen to what this was being pushed, because it just didn't make sense right from the start. But sadly, it worked its way in with that constant stream of fear nightly by all of the supposed health experts pushing doom and gloom. Yeah. And so 22nd of February, I did my bit to save Granny. 1 dose of AstraZeneca, 22nd of February 2021. At a vaccine driving clinic at my GP surgery.
Yeah.
It was basically roll up your arm, you get the vaccine, and then it's a case of, oh, and here's a bit of information afterwards.
So after the event. So it literally was, when you say drive in, it was literally drive through. Like picking up a coffee. So drive in, roll up your sleeve. Somebody would come to the window. Was it a doctor? Did they identify themselves as a doctor and nurse, or?
She's a doctor anyway, because she's actually married to one of the people who's on the board of the GP surgery. She's full of a cold, spluttering everywhere, but she said quite clearly, "Don't worry, you won't catch it." I thought, okay, that's reassuring.
Sweet irony.
Yeah, I know.
So, like you say, she came up spluttering, masked up. Did she have a spacesuit on by any chance?
No.
And then obviously gave you the jab, and
she didn't have a mask on.
And what did that information? So she didn't have a mask on, as you mentioned.
She didn't have a mask on because she was sneezing everywhere.
And sorry, you have to laugh, don't you, at all of the
You do.
insanity? But
It's ridiculous.
and this bit of paper, did it? I mean, firstly, did they tell you anything about it pre? I think you said not. And what did they
No.
tell you about it afterwards? Did they give you any information about this liquid they've just pumped into your arm?
The basic guideline of some side effects you might see. Other than that, there was nothing really said. It was like, have this piece of paper. I'm not putting any emphasis on it. This is how I judged it. I'm not putting any emphasis on it because it's not important. So you basically getting it afterwards, and it's the sort of thing you think, well, okay, it's not worth looking at, so I'll just put it down. I kept it to this day, um, and you look actually on it, on the back of it, and it's actually monkey adenovirus as one of the ingredients, and it's just like, what
Correct me
the
if I'm
hell did
wrong,
I
Wayne.
do?
I mean, if you're being injected with, I think I looked at the dose the other day, 250 billion in inactivated virion particles or infectious particles, they call them. And I'd like to know if I was receiving 250 billion infectious units, sorry, the phrase they used, into my arm of monkey adenovirus. That was obviously the AstraZeneca way of delivering the mRNA, but the Pfizer and Moderna is equally as toxic with the lipid nanoparticle laden half a mil fluid that was injected. But again, you're not told of this at the time, and it sounds like you weren't told anything at all. Same as me, I was told it would stay in my deltoid a few hours, and that's the end of it, and didn't think anything of it. So I think a lot of people can empathise for your reasons, doing it for, we were told we were silent assassins killing our granny. Had we not, and why wouldn't we? The government were telling us it was safe and effective. Our colleagues were, NHS management, government. The message was, up in lights, wasn't it? Safe and effective. So, why would you doubt that?
24/7 message that you need to do the right thing to protect your family and friends. If
Exactly.
you didn't, you are being careless and cruel, basically.
There was a
Um,
huge campaign, wasn't there, where there were celebrities and news presenters, chastising, I won't name names, but, chastising this disgusting contingent of the population that were just unvaccinated and unclean and all the rest of it. Now, my position on that's always been, if your vaccine works, it doesn't matter what anyone else has done. If you're vaccinated and I'm not, then if I catch COVID and die, that was my conscious decision. If your vaccine works, then you're protected, go back to living your life. So I never really understood that fear from the vaccinated cohort about what the unvaccinated were doing with their arms, because it had no impact on them. But going back to you though, Wayne, so you had this jab, you remember the date exactly. So that's always interesting. People do remember the date it was administered because things happened that changed their life thereafter. So I'm going to hand over the mic to you to kind of just tell us what. Did you just have the one?
yeah, just the one. They told me after the symptoms and everything else had become apparent that any more could kill me because I had such a violent reaction to it. Um, and I decided at that point that I wouldn't anyway, because it can become very quickly apparent that everything that I'd been told, or by the media that had been expressed, was all a lie. And so I had such an amount of anger in me at this realization. I mean, just within hours of having the vaccine, I had extraordinary headaches. I mean, the pressure on my temple, it was crippling. I couldn't think, couldn't do anything. I couldn't process. And I spent the next few days in bed with pain relief, trying to hopefully ease it. It didn't. My GPs didn't care. They basically came back with, oh, it's normal side effects you're seeing. And I said, well, it's because it was getting worse over the days. And I said, well, I'm struggling to walk. The pain is excruciating.
Were you a headache person, Wayne? Were you somebody that suffers from headaches or migraines, or was this completely out of the blue, out of the
I
norm?
did some years ago because I had a previous head injury about 14, 15 years ago, roughly that. So I had experience of them, but this was far and above that. If I had the exact pain of that some years ago, I kind of thought, that may be something kind of connected or something. So whether I've got a weakness in my brain or my tissues, I don't know. That's another possibility. But from what I did read and I did talking to others, that the side effect that I saw was the high blood pressure. And it caused mine to skyrocket to such a degree that when I finally saw by a doctor and they got an ambulance for me, within seconds, they said, we're going to call an ambulance straight away because I was incoherent. I was struggling to walk. I was staggering down the corridor, not making much sense. Right, we'll get you an ambulance straight away. Blood pressure was 203 over 120, which linked in with one of the known side effects of them, which is high blood pressure.
And again, no history in the past of you having had blood pressure issues or being
No,
borderline.
I'm going to say I was healthy. I mean, I spent my time being very active. The job role I did, initially was very active, and then the last few years have moved into more of a split time from being an active role and sitting doing risk assessments. I was a fire health safety training officer, so I had much of different things to think about every day, but I needed that brain power to be able to think on my feet. Sadly, this injury impacted me so much. I had to leave that role because I couldn't do the physical, I couldn't do the mental, the tasks set me.
So you felt that acute change in your sort of cognitive capacity, your processing capacity, and what sort of time frame did you notice that? Was that kind of within a short
I mean,
time
that was
frame?
within hours. That was all within hours. The same side effects that I had given me the headaches, 1 to 2 hours. I had basically everything hitting me at once. My brain functioning managed to improve slightly 5 months later when I had some ivermectin. Amazingly, with 1 to 2 hours, it was like a veil being lifted off my brain. All of a sudden, I could start thinking again. It didn't ease the blood pressure issues. It didn't ease all the other things that I've been aligned to, like POTS, Guillain-Barré syndrome, and others. I still have symptoms of all those plaguing me to this day, 3 years later.
So you had Guillain-Barré as well?
Well, they investigated me for it. They couldn't discount it, and instead of going further with that, they just left it.
So in summary, if you were to just summarize, because we covered a lot of ground there in that last few minutes, how would you say? So the time frame was tight from the vaccine to these symptoms suddenly coming, and they were sort of multi-systemic, as it were.
1 to 2
So in
hours.
summary, how would you say it affected you? What was the list of symptoms that you were going to the GP that day with? Obviously, the headache you've mentioned, but
Yeah, I mean, because it was all these lockdowns and everything else, the doctors wouldn't actually see you. And so it was all phone conversations. So you kind of struggle in silence. You've got the ignorance of being shut down and told not to call in with silly requests, literally. So to this day, I still have a very slight arrhythmia to my heart rate because of the inflammation causing harms. I suffer heavily with neurological issues.
how would you summarize those? When you say neurological issues in more detail, what do you suffer with neurologically?
Everything from vision to problems with sleep. Because of the headaches it's causing me, I'm still getting shocking headaches. I mean, I have Zapain and sumatriptan. Often nothing I take helps it, so I end up wearing an ice pack, which I bought from Amazon. Brilliant thing, because within half an hour you can see immediate effects. So sight, vision, sensations. It's hard to describe them. Often you don't think of them too much. You just live with it.
Yeah. And I think this is what doctors struggle with, is that obviously people are coming to them with this plethora when they are actually seeing patients with this plethora of multi-systemic symptoms, and to say it fits into a diagnostic category, they don't. Essentially, they don't. And so then that's where the gaslighting around the functional neurological disorder comes into it. I don't know if you've been accused of functional neurological disorder as yet, but if not yet, you may well be in the future. But this is because it stumps doctors. It falls outside of diagnostic criteria on constellations of symptoms that would form a diagnosis. So people having a bit of this and a bit of that, this doesn't fit with anything. When you're the doctor facing this sort of stuff.
With so many years of being shut down and ignored, you basically lose that pattern of speech, because after a while you would have grown to be familiar talking about it.
And who's shutting you down there, Wayne? Are they the doctors shutting you down and ignoring you?
Yeah, because within a month of me being discharged from hospital, I could see that the narrative had changed already. And so from being admitted to hospital in early March because I basically spent 2 weeks trying to deal with all the symptoms, being ignored, being gaslit, as you say. I'd lost the understanding of how serious I was. I knew that I had to do something by phoning my doctor, but I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't going out, wasn't really functioning. So I didn't think too much about my condition. So you deal with that and you try to make the most of things. I lost my train of thought. Where were we?
Brain fog in action. No, that's fine. I mean, I would say that, what do you think, Wayne, about this? Are you in any doubt that this is the vaccine or not? I'm going to let you decide that.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't my place to say initially, but my GP said it straight away from the ambulance turning up. We'll report it to the yellow card system. The hospital said upon my admission, don't worry, we'll report it to the yellow card system. Bearing in mind, I didn't even know what that was. So this is them. It's an official reporting system for injuries caused. Okay, fine. I later saw this narrative changing, so I actually reported it myself. I had conversations with them and AstraZeneca thinking it was going to help me. And sadly, they just led me on a merry time, basically just giving me lip service, much like Rishi Sunak does or anybody else trying to protect that narrative. They'll just talk the talk, but they won't actually do anything to help you, sadly.
So along the way, I know you mentioned this doctor with the yellow card at the beginning, whether that was sent off or not, we can but speculate. But has anyone in the hospital admission or since in your direct medical care setting, as in your own GP or nurses, has anyone attributed this to the vaccine, or have they given every other excuse but?
Yeah, pretty much every other excuse but. And they've basically made up things that I could then be tested for otherwise to then explain away the symptoms I've had. Silly things from urine tests that last for 48 hours. You end up with a 2-gallon tub that you've got to then deliver to them once you've completed it. And I did that 3 times because I kept losing it. I mean, how the hell do you lose something that size if you've then been taken seriously? And this is where I could see the problem was that they were just basically trying to get me to react, whether it was physically or emotionally.
Yeah. And have any tests, Wayne, have any tests shown any results? I think because that's what I'm finding at the moment, that people come to me, they allege vaccine injury, they've had lots of tests and nothing shows. And so that's where the whole gaslighting that we talked about, the diagnostic criteria, but also, that people are having the tests and the negative, so they're not seeing anything macro pathology on scans and things. Have you had anything that's thrown up a lesion of some description that's identifiable?
Yeah, I mean, I've basically had lesions showing up on the MRIs. They've said that because of the damage to the brain tissue, the demyelination, that they said mycene MS is likely in my future. And that was 2 different neurologists who'd said that to me. So when they said that to me in the hospital, I cried basically because I already felt horrible enough. And they just quite blasé about saying, "Oh, do you know what the MS is?" I said, "Well, yes," with a vague understanding, and then they just walk away. So I've had that. I've had some shockingly negative neurologists, initially helpful and then not. My GP basically refused to help me further. I had to take them to a health tribunal to then be referred back to another neurologist. So that was a 2-year wait in total. And then before December, they saw me a few months early and started off a whole new raft of investigations. Brilliantly, one was for neuropathy, electromyography. The only problem being the nerves in my feet, hands, body are so bad that they had to get such a high current running through to get readings that it's left me in spasms for weeks, horrible spasms in my back and my hip. But that's proof because you had to get a referral from a colleague to actually check the results and see how bad it was. So that's a neuropathy. diagnosis kind of right there. Next month, I see John Radcliffe Hospital, their brain injury department, because that's what they specialize in there. What they can do, I don't know, but at 3 years down the line, it's finally seeing the people that I've needed to see for a long time.
And that's a significant amount of time, isn't it? You've been sort of passed from pillar to post. Nobody really is shedding on. All that the profession is saying, it's definitely not the vaccine by the sounds of it. But
He said
it's
straight away when I saw him after giving my story and the very clear timeline of within 1 to 2 hours. Yeah, he says there's a definite link to your vaccine. There's nothing else that would have pointed to it because of your good health. So quite clearly, there's been a lot of changes in medicine, the way that they can talk to patients and the way that they're more accepting. Whether they feel they're not taking a risk anymore by speaking out, I don't know, but it was a very good conversation for that reason.
No, that's promising that there's been that link made. You're one of few people, because the vast majority of people are here. It's just completely dismissed, even if it's an instant reaction or within an hour or so. It's
I had it
all the doctors are
initially
certain of it's not the vaccine, and that's it.
only because it was so early on, end of February, beginning of March. It's only because it was so early on that I had that link on my discharge notes as well. It's been linked to the vaccine. So
It's been
I've still
documented.
got that. Yeah, I've still got that. But because they then decide to change their opinions, it doesn't matter because you've still got that evidence. So yeah, as you say, many people didn't have that even.
So is what you're saying, that the original link was made, but now it's almost being kind of backtracked upon? The doctors are now saying that link is they're trying to, but obviously it's been written in black and white. So, so yeah, I mean, along the time, have you been offered any antidepressants, or that it's functional in any way, shape, or form, or gaslit that it's mental health?
So I had 2 problems. One, I think, was the one with prednisone and the anxiety drug, I think it is, is what I've been reading recently. I might have it slightly wrong. That one, I had a major side effect with. I struggled to breathe, and I was rushed to A&E because there's a problem that it can cause, apparently, of a death I read about recently. I also had major side effects from encephalitis, brain inflammation, again, because that's what I was originally admitted with. That's what was causing the lower motor function, the inability to walk, think, process thought. So I kept getting that again. Admitted about 4 or 5 times over the course of a month in August 2021. Meeting a paramedic who basically didn't want to send me to hospital again because I had these same symptoms coming back on again for I think it was 6th time during that month. Basically leaving me half lying on the floor because I basically slid off the sofa. I couldn't stop myself. Took one look at me, saw my discharge date, says, "Well, you're not going back to hospital. I'm cancelling your ambulance." And he basically left me there. That's the sort of gaslighting that was commonplace with a lot of people. I've read about and I've spoke to people that had similar experiences. Such was that pressure that they don't even want to believe what they're seeing in front of their eyes.
Yeah. It's like a blindness to it, isn't it? It's a cognitive dissonance on steroids, isn't it? Really, and that's my experience of speaking to vaccine injured day in, day out. What I'm seeing a lot of at the moment is doctors are now connecting the dots. What would you say to those doctors now? I mean, I've been inundated by messages since I put a video out, went viral a couple of weeks ago. Hundreds of doctors, nurses, paramedics have spoken to me privately, but unwilling to sort of break rank, as it were, and to speak out. How would you address those people that are considering, making that connection now in 2024 for the sake of their patients? How would you encourage them to?
It's shameful that they haven't up till now. The amount of people that have died and been injured because of their silence is disgusting. People died before me. Stephen was one of them, the doctor. Numerous after me. Now, any one of those could have been saved by just that flow of information from these doctors and nurses, from the patients they were seeing or hearing about. They'll have that in their conscience forever. They've got a chance to come forward now and save further harms and get these poisons removed from market.
Yeah.
They owe it to themselves. They owe it to mankind, don't they? Really, seriously.
Yeah, that's a powerful message, Wayne. And just bringing back to your life again, just to finish off, really, is how are things today? So as we speak, and how has this impacted you, not only physically but psychologically, and with your work, for example, how has it impacted your life as a whole?
So basically, I had to stop my life full stop. I could no longer go to the gym, running. Walking is a serious problem with the fatigue that I battle against. The supplements and things that I take have improved things to a small degree, and I'll champion those any day, every day. But it's not the life I had. I had to stop working officially January 2022, 2 years ago. I just couldn't function to the degree that they wanted, but also it was exhausting me so much. I was actually more worried about my health because I was seeing all these reports about people having sudden heart attacks.
Mm.
With this arrhythmia, that is another one of those things that this neurologist is actually pushing to investigate me for, which is good. But the problem is the damages it's doing in the meantime.
Like you say, this is 2024 now, and they're just starting to pick up on the investigations as to a link. Well, not even a link with the vaccine, but just investigating the basic pathology in you. And anything could
That's
have
a
happened
problem.
in that time, really. And finally, Wayne, just to finish off, have you had any support in terms of, obviously you've lost all of these things, pretty much every aspect of your life has been impacted by this. Have you had any help from the vaccine damage payment scheme, or any support for any care that you may need, care needs?
I'm on my third appeal, which kind of tells you a lot about that.
What's
I
your
tried.
experience been of that? If you just sort of briefly, just
Shocking. Took me 2 years to get the first reply back. And that was only after a year of excuses, apologies.
and I mean, you've got this in black and white on a discharge summary, the link,
It's
and
there.
you're still struggling to them. And for people who don't know, this is a £120,000 vaccine damage compensation scheme that Rishi quoted famously in
Yeah,
the.
it's open to all, but it's not really, because you have to have either died, lost a limb, or be so severely impacted, your quality of life is pretty much zero.
Yeah. They've
These
got
are the
this
only
60%. They've got a threshold, haven't they? I've seen people who've lost the use of one leg, for example, and they've been told you've got another leg and you've got two arms, so that's only a 0.25%. 25% loss of function. So jog on essentially. So what my experience has been that they find any reason to pin it on other things, coincidence, etc. And the ones that have been paid out have had to go through this process that you've experienced that's been tough at the time when you need some help as well. You're not asking for lots of money here. It's just it's a very small amount of help with, you've lost your job and your career, to help with
I've
any.
battled the government over basic benefits, my government pension through the company I was working for. All of these departments have basically put up the shutters and say, look, no. So I've had to go through the legal route through ombudsman with all of them. That's the constant pressure you're facing, because not only is your life now so damaged and ruined, you have to pick up the pieces. Now, that financial help would make such a difference. It's not going to give your health back, but it would help just having that in place. And then if we had the support to actually recognize as like you've got a long COVID clinic, then why not do the same for the injured? It's too much of an inconvenience to accept that we exist.
And as you mentioned, there's that clear temporal relationship, and we'll let the public decide if they agree or disagree with us. But you're on your third appeal. What's the basis of their rejections? What are they saying to you, Wayne? Are they blaming it on coincidence, or?
Well, the problem is that VIT is only the only condition they're actually accepting links to at the moment. You can have proven links like I have and so many others do, which is why they've had several thousand rejections already, purely on the basis that you've got a condition that they're not accepting.
Yeah.
VIT seems to be the only one, vaccine-induced thrombocytopenia, which is blood clots.
Yeah.
That's the only one they're accepting at the moment.
So crazy. So the scheme's there, it's just inaccessible, and the criteria are so narrow that the people like
That's
yourself
right.
can't
It
access it
needs
at
to
the
be
time.
reformed
Yeah,
majorly,
not
not
fit for
only on the
purpose.
basis of accepting injuries down to the minor, so it's on a scale, but also for those who have died to get £120,000 payout. That was basically worked out on decades ago. It's never been reformed since.
Hmm.
That's wrong.
Wayne, it really is a tragedy to hear these stories day in day out, and I apologise. I always apologise on behalf of my profession. Not that I've instigated this in any way, but it's just so sorry to hear this has happened to you. And I'm here for you, as I've said before. If there's anything I
Yeah.
can do to help,
Thank you.
but
Yeah, thank you.
thank
Yeah,
you so much for telling your story today and the bravery it's done to come and have a chat with me today. And
not a problem, mate.
I wish you all the
Thank you
best
so
in the
much.
future.
Thank you, Luke.
All right,
Take
you
care,
take
mate.
care. Bye.